Alright, welcome everybody. This is GTM here. We're going to go ahead and start our first lesson plan, or I should say our lab, a review for our first lab on layer blends. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and launch up Photoshop here. Alright, here's an image I created. It's basically a tribute to Manny Pacquiao. He's the 8-time world champion, first in history. I think the only other boxer that came close was I think Mayweather with 5, I think. And Mayweather, he don't want none of this. Anyways, all right. Well, I decided to make a tribute using my layer blends, layer masks, and basically and some custom brushes. So what I want you to do for your lab is basically find some image, basically do a collage on someone that inspires you based off the techniques that you learned today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And we're going to recreate something similar using the same images so you can see the process here. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Let's go File, New. I'm going to go ahead and name this my Manny Pacquiao. There you go, Pacquiao. I'm going to go with 8.5 by 11 inches, 300 resolution. Always working 300, RGB mode, color, and 8-bit. So let's go ahead and press OK. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to image rotation clockwise. I'm going to change my canvas to landscape. I'm going to go ahead and I guess we can leave that locked for now. If you ever want to unlock your layers, just double click and then you can rename it and unlock it. In this case, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go background, press OK. Alright, there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and resize this just a bit. Alright, we're going to work with our first image here. And when you're searching for images to use for some of your Photoshop projects, make sure you get high-res images. Ones you find like on Google or Yahoo, just make sure you click large and get the highest res images that you can possibly work with. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I grabbed this grunge layer here. And usually grunge layers can give you some pretty good neat effects when you start layer blending things together. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that right in there. And as I do it, I'm holding down shift. When you hold down shift, that actually centers it for you. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And let's get in the habit of naming our layers. So I'm going to call this grunge. Now from here, I can sit here and resize this. So I can go to edit, free transform, but you might want to get used to the hotkeys eventually, which is Control T as you get used to using Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and rotate that just a bit, and I'm going to kind of slide it somewhere right there, and I'm going to hit Shift Alt just to kind of scale it up. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave that right there. I'm going to hit Apply. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and open up another image. We got one here of Manny Pacquiao. This is a pretty high-res image of him. I'm going to go ahead and just click and drag that in there. Now, when you work with images like this, make sure you study them, Obviously, his arm's cut off right here. So I'm going to kind of play that with the canvas on this side, to the right side here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control T, Shift Alt, and I want to scale that up. And when you grab images, it's always good to kind of work with them, like crop them in certain areas. You don't have to force the whole image in. I'm going to go ahead and rotate that now. And then let's see, that looks pretty, let's go about right there. That looks pretty good. Press Apply. Now what we are going to do is we're going to learn how to layer blend these. So I'm going to go ahead and name that Manny. Now, right here are your blend modes, and they work off your darks and lights. So the best way to kind of get used to them is just click, use your arrow keys on the keyboard, and just shuffle through. And you get different types of blends. In this case, I'm actually going to use multiply. I kind of like how that looks. Now with my first two images that are multiplied together, take the time to clean them up now. I mean, obviously we don't want the grunge all over his face, so we're going to use layer blend or layer mask. So I'm going to click on the Manny layer. Right here is where how you lay layer mask down. I click that. As you can see, it puts a new layer linked to the graphic, which is the Manny graphic. So I'm going to click on my layer area using my paintbrush and grabbing a feather eraser or a feather style brush. As you can see, it's right there. And if you hit your brackets, they're right by your P letter key, the letter P on your keyboard. The brackets beside it, you can rescale and scale. Now, if you ever lose that, chances are you hit cap locks. And you can't see your brush tip, just make sure you check your caps locks and see if it's there. Alright, now this works based off blacks and whites, so we're already set to our black and white here on our, our swatches. And I'm going to go ahead and black basically holds back is what it does, and white reveals through. So I'm going to click on his face. Whoops, not on the Manny layer though. I made a mistake. I want to go on the grunge layer, so I'm going to click on the grunge layer and add a layer mask to that one as well. Alright, so I'm on the grunge layer mask, and we're going to kind of clean up the grunge off Manny's face and around here, and we don't want that little hard edge there, so I'm going to kind of just clean that right off there by clicking away. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, I'm going to close that Manny picture out because we don't need it. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and open up a new image. File open. I got one of Manny here putting a beat down on Ricky Hatton. I'm going to open that up. Ricky Hatton's another world champion boxer, 3-time world champion, I think. And they had to lay it down. He was undefeated at 140, the 140 weight division, and Manny Pacquiao decided to go in there and say, I own you. And yeah, he pretty much demolished him. Actually, here's a clip. You have to see this. Boom. Oh my gosh, what a straight to think. And will Hatton make it up from this? Can he beat the count? Is that it? And anybody says, no way. That is that. What an amazing knockout shot. That is the most spectacular one-punch shot of Manny Pacquiao's incredible career. Any fight. Brutal. Brutal. Anyways, that was a great fight, even though it lasted 2 rounds. Alright, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag that in there. Remember your hotkeys, Control T to resize it. And then I'm going to hit Shift Alt to scale it up. Let's scale it up pretty big too. And then I'm going to actually rotate this because I like how the cracks go at an angle. So I'm going to probably put that right about there. That looks pretty good. I'm going to click my arrow and apply the transformation. Now from here, let's call this the Hatton layer. And then let's go ahead and put a layer mask on the Hatton layer, and let's clean that up right there. So I'm going to take my paintbrush, make sure I'm on black, and I'm going to resize this down just a bit and kind of dabble in here to kind of blend the two together. You like those sound effects I'm playing, huh? There we go. That looks pretty good. And let's clean up. Alright, what I went ahead and did, it was cleaned up that little spot because I wanted a halo around Manny Pacquiao's head. I thought that would look pretty cool. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take this layer back, the Hatton layer, and I'm going to bring that opacity back up to 85 for now. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and open a new layer, and we're going to work with the Margarita layer. By the way, this was another brutal fight Pacquiao had last, I believe this last, what is this today? It was probably last November, I believe. Yeah, it was in November this fight took place. Man, talking about a David and Goliath fight. By the way, I'm hitting the Control T to resize it and Shift Alt. Yeah, Pacquiao pretty much, yeah, he broke his eye orbital. Luckily, Margarito is, he's alright. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and Shift Alt still, and I'm resizing that. I'm going to place that somewhere, I'm going to say right about there. That looks pretty good. Maybe I'll raise it up slightly. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and Click here on my arrow to apply the transformation. Alright, from there now, let's go ahead and name this the Margarito layer. And let's go ahead and clean some of this up now. So we're going to create a layer mask. I'm going to get my paintbrush here. And I'm going to resize that using my brackets right beside the letter P. Alright, let's go ahead and I got my opacity set pretty low. And I'm just going to kind of dabble away right here to get that to blend in somewhat. There we go. Now, right around Margarito's head, I'm gonna actually take my magnifying glass and hold down. I'm right clicking, holding down and dragging and zooming up in that little area. Alright, so I'm going to resize my brush to get really kind of detailed in there. And sometimes you want to do that. You want to zoom in and out and to be able to, get precise with your blendings. That looks pretty good. I'm going to grab my magnifying glass and hit Alt and zoom out again. Do it again, and one more time. Oh, that looks pretty good. I'm digging that. Alright, looks like we got a pretty good collage going. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to layer this up. I think it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and take these layers. I'm going to hold down Control as I'm grabbing all of them. And you know what? I'm going to create a folder, and we're going to name this folder. I'm sorry, I should have been named the folder first. We'll call this Images. I'm going to grab all these. And you know what? I'm just going to drag them right in there. And now those folders, or those images, are within that one folder. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. And let's go ahead and lay down some fonts. So, I'm going to come here and take my text tool. And I'm going to make that, I'm going to flip that and make that white. Always lay down white text. So I'm going to go ahead and click here, and I'm going to type in Manny's name. Alright, and I decided to use like a real epic font known as Trajan font. I'm going to increase that probably to 72. Now I can go higher if I want, maybe like 100 if I want it, but I don't want it that big. So, 75, that looks pretty good. Alright, now with my fonts. When you lay down fonts, you got to be just as precise, even, with your fonts as much as you lay down and how accurately you lay down your images. Your fonts are very important where you place them. For example, I can't just throw Manny, the name Manny, right back on this white background. So then we're going to have to we got to work with the contrasting factors of the image. So I'm going to go ahead and, I think this, plus, alignment is very important. And, if you want alignment, you can take your rulers here. And if you need to get to them, there's view, and then you got your rulers. I got mine checked. I can sit here and click and drag these, and if it snaps on you, just turn them off, or if you want them on, here's your snaps. And then I'm going to go ahead and line this, because it all depends on how I lay this font down. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and click the text tool in between these letters of Manny. I'm going to hold down Alt and my arrow key back and forth. You can tighten up your fonts. You always want to tighten up stuff. The closer, the tighter the font, the better it looks. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Alright, but now see, I want this border here, and I want to line up the P to Manny Pacquiao, which I'm about to type right on that end. So I'm going to hit Alt, click on Manny's name, drag it to duplicate it, and then I'll probably place it right about there. And then I'm going to click my text tool, highlight it, and we're going to call this Pacquiao. And then I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go my font size. Let's say about 36 looks good. And then I'm actually going to go in between and kern them by holding Alt and my arrow keys. I'm just tightening up my fonts, my letters. All right, that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to actually place that right about, I want that lined up properly. Right about there. That looks, no, you know what? We're going to click Manny, raise him up a little bit. And back to Pacquiao, raise that up. That looks about good. Now, you know, if you want to hide your guidelines, just go to View and then just check off Show Extras, or it's Control H. There you go. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually add some text, slight effects to the text. Alright. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to duplicate some text layers, some font layers, or these layers right here. Okay, let's get to our fonts now. And I'm going to show you a technique. Now normally, I always duplicate my fonts. For example, we're going to start off with the Manny, you know, text right here. So I'm going to right click, duplicate the layer. And we'll just call this the Manny, we'll say Manny top layer. We'll say Manny top text. Just to indicate that that's the top text. And this one I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to name that Manny blur text. Now, I got two of the same, you know, they're basically on top of each other. And this one, the one below, the blur text, what I'm going to do is go to my filter, and I'm going to experiment with some of these. Well, I already know what I'm going to experiment with, but or I know what I'm going to use, but you can always experiment with these effects on your text, and you know, to get interesting, unique looks. So, for example, I'm going to go blur, motion blur, and in order to do this, we have to rasterize our text, and that's basically what that's doing is collapsing the text, so you can, you know, it's basically collapsing it to a rasterized graphic. That way you can't manipulate it anymore. Manipulate it as in you can't change the font style or you know, the heights and the letters. So for example, right now it's not rasterized. So if I were to take the top one and, you know, take my text tool, and, you know, I can highlight these, and then, you know, of course I can change the font styles of them, plus the size. I can even grab certain parts of the letter, go to my windows and get to those tools as well with the character tools. You know, I can just change one font if I wanted to. You know, let me actually let me hide one of these so you can see what I'm talking about. For example, I can take that N and just you know, maybe I just wanted that N to be that big by increasing that. I'm gonna Control Z, by the way. I can even adjust the height of separate letters, let alone the whole. You know, maybe I want to grab groups of them. I can even, you know, this is your kerning manually. I mean, not manually, but with your character tool. So that's the kerning tool. Otherwise, we were doing it manually with your Alt, just tightening them up. So I'm going to go ahead and you know, manually tighten that back up. Oops. Use the Alt key. All right. Also, like if I highlight, it's, you know, it doesn't matter which ones I highlight. Right here, I can actually offset the text as well. I just wanted to throw those out there in case you wanted to really manipulate your fonts. Alright, but what I was getting at is I'm going to re-show that blur text layer. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur. I'm going to go Motion Blur. So now that I rasterized it, hit OK. I got a motion blur going on. Looks pretty good at 284. I got lucky on that one, so I'm gonna hit OK. But notice, you know, so, but it's rasterized now, so there's nothing I can do to manipulate that font. Even here, if I go to the Manny top text, I'm able to manipulate that font. But if I decide to rasterize the Manny top layer, right click, I can rasterize that layer. Now I no longer have the ability to change the font style or nothing. So I just added a layer is what happened there. But the good thing is once you rasterize it, you're able to do interesting things to the font by maybe I wanted to decorate it a little bit with an eraser style brush, which I got a brush right here I selected, you know, and then maybe I wanted to damage it or, you know, do some erasing style, but not that I want to on this piece. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. Now, when you're ready to, you know, damage your font, you can probably rasterize it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the Pacquiao letters as well. I'm going to go ahead and right-click, duplicate layer, and we're going to call this the Pacquiao top text. Like I said, I always get in the habit of naming your text, or your layers, I should say. All right, I'm going to go ahead and, whoops, I'm going to double-click that, and we're going to call this the Pacquiao blur text. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take that layer, the blur text, and let's do the same filter. Filter, blur, motion blur. Rasterize it, and there we go. And that blur looks pretty good, so I'm going to keep it there. You know, you can possibly play with certain things, like the Pacquiao blur. I might bring it down to, say, 90. The Manny blur here, I'll bring that down to about 90. Maybe I don't want it so dominant, you know, the blur layer. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now, the next thing I want to introduce you to is, you know, you have layer styles you can work with. So, for example, I'm going to go ahead and take the Pacquiao or the Manny top text, and I'm going to double click on the side here. When you do that, this layered style pop-up window, it's called your dialog box. I call them dialog boxes, but it's your layer styles. The reason I kept my text white, because if I want to, I can always change the cover overlay by checking it. By default, it's red, so if I click here, I can actually click on a swatch and then, you know, pick whatever color I really truly wanted. You know, now in this case I am just going to keep white because I do like the white text. But you know, you also have your blend modes. You can blend those in just like we were blending our layers. You know, maybe I want to put this on screen, and well, I guess that didn't really work. But you know, like I said, you can actually shuffle through your fonts. The only problem is I have a white, you know, it's a white font, so it's not really gonna blend. There's no, you know, it's not really damaged or anything. All right. Anyways, though, you can actually bring down your opacities of, you know, maybe I want to put a different color on it. You can mix those. All right. I'm actually gonna keep that white though for now. What I am gonna do though is I'm gonna put an outer glow on it. When I turn that on, you're gonna see a slight little glow. I'm gonna click on it, and I'm gonna put a dark outer glow on my font, and I'm gonna change that to normal, and I'm gonna do the size and the spread a little bit. Tighten that up slightly. I just want a dark glow. That'll pop it off the background. Now, what else can I do? You know, I could possibly put a gradient on there if I wanted to. So you have gradient overlays, and you can click that, and right around here I can actually change the gradient style. So by clicking in there, you know, you get this dialog other box, and I can, you know, I can pick these kind of gradients, and I can change the colors if I wanted to. Maybe I wanted to select this, and maybe I wanted to make it somewhat of a yellow kind of, or orange kind of gradient, just like that. That looks really neat. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK, and I'm going to go ahead and press OK here. Now the thing is, I like that gradient now. I like that style. So for me to try to recreate the same thing. Sometimes it might get tough when you're working with multiple texts. So I'm going to go ahead and just create new style here. And I'm going to name this the Manny text. I'm going to press OK. Press OK here. Now what that has done is created a new layer style in my styles palette. And if I lose that, I can just go to Windows and Layer Styles. There's my new style. I'm going to go ahead and just drag it right onto the Pacquiao. What now? See, now that helps. Your layer styles are awesome because, when you got multiple texts laid down, you can just click and drag certain ones you like. And in that case, that looks pretty neat, so I'm good to go on that. Alright, so I think my fonts are, my font is pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and, create, a new folder. And we can call this our text. I'm going to go ahead and grab all these by holding Control, just grabbing all those. And let's see, there's 4 of them. And I'm just going to click them into the text folder, drag them. And now I have my text and my images. Alright, we're going to go ahead and